Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Please take your seats. We're going to get started shortly. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
I received a letter on September 25th, 2023. Dear Madam Clerk, pursuant to my authority in section 3-1075 of the Home Rule Charter of the City of New Orleans, I'm calling a special city council meeting on October 25th, 2023 at 10 a.m. The purpose of the meeting will be to receive the 2024 executive budget address, as well as any other matters that the council may lawfully consider. Please make the necessary arrangements to have this special meeting cablecast live on the government access television channel and tape for recasting in the future. Sincerely, J.P. Morrell, New Orleans City Council President. Roll call, Councilmember Thomas.
Present.
Councilmember Green.
Present.
Councilmember Morrell.
Here.
Councilmember Moreno. Present. Councilmember King. Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Jeruso. We have 6 members. We have a quorum. All right. Mr. Jeruso, it is your show.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to see everyone to get ready for the budget. 2 quick orders of housekeeping before we start with Madam Mayor. The first is we are really primarily only going to do item number 1 today. All of these other motions get deferred to the final day, so we won't be voting on those. We will also receive at the end of the meeting all of the budget requests from the administration. Those always get amended, so even though they will be read at the end of the meeting, that is not the final. But I just want to set that expectation because I see there's already at least 1 public comment. So with that, Madam Mayor, the floor is yours. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, all members of the New Orleans City Council. Thank you for being here, Madam Clerk, all staff present, both City Council and executive staff. I just want to say again, good morning. It's a great day to be here and with a real vision, not only present, but moving the city forward. You know, I wanted to share on Monday. On Monday, I had the opportunity to participate in the Urban Sustainability Directors Conference that decided to select New Orleans for its 1,000 members who serve in the space of resiliency and sustainability throughout the United States of America and even globally. But they were very intentional about picking and choosing our city of New Orleans because we have a demonstrated track record to stand on based on resiliency and sustainability. It's rooted and grounded in the work that we have been doing collectively, and it is noticed. As and before I was brought up to even give remarks, there was a real reflection that this 1,000 body group did by paying real tribute and homage to the land, this land, the city of New Orleans and all of her people, and understanding that regardless of the shocks and challenges that we've had to face and endure, that we are a city and we are a people that always emerge demonstrating real resilience and again, sustainability. They talked about and referenced our investment in development that has been dormant in over 16 plus years and even further than that, reaching 50. They spoke about Six Flags and the redevelopment there that we collectively have moved forward. They spoke about Gordon Plaza and the work again that we did to right a wrong of past generations, creating a win-win-win for our people and for our city. They referenced and talked about even Lincoln Beach and how we have prioritized again to right a wrong, but put real investments in the ground to move our city forward. They selected us because they see us as being a model for this country and for the world. And you know what we are. How they see us is one thing, but what matters the most is how we see ourselves. And how we see ourselves, I'm telling you, we should be proud and we should be grateful. Grateful for our collective efforts of managing the people's money by being great stewards of the purse, by ensuring that we're making long-term investments, regardless of a lack of in areas prior to us being in these places of leadership. I want you to know that in seeing us is a true reflection of how this city, her people, have made progress. In spite of, again, all the challenges and unprecedented challenges that we face together. And in spite of even some of those challenges and focuses on me, collectively, the employees, over 4,000 city employees, never wavered, never gave up, only dug deeper in within themselves, showed up time and time again to deliver on behalf of the vision that we have collectively set. Our most precious resource are the city employees, the people, again, that we depend on every day to deliver on our behalf, but to deliver for the residents and visitors of this city. And as I'm presenting, and we're collectively presenting the proposed budget for 2024, it really is rooted and grounded in the work that we set on the start of 2023. We knew that coming out of COVID-19 and the shocks, again, that we experienced through that, whether that's inflation, of course, capacity issues in terms of workforce, supplies, all of these different things we managed through and got work done. In spite of, our people showed up. We said that it was going to be a 3-year plan and a focus and a strategy to get us not only in recovery, to hit reset, and to also embrace what we know is a new normal. Because the workforce, in terms of our capacity, we know that we're still growing, but we also understand the challenges that cities are facing around the United States of America. But what this city continues to demonstrate is that we're resilient and we know what sustainability is all about, because again, it's rooted in our people, the ones that we depend on. So we're starting with this budget, very consequential in terms of 2024 now. We've laid that foundation in 23. So now in 24, it really is to stay focused and to continue to deliver on the results and work that we have seen in this year of 2023. So whether that is, of course, investing and being very serious about investing one-time money that we fought very hard for, ensuring that those dollars were a direct allocation to this city, and we put them to work in 2023. Putting those dollars to work, again, never in any way overlooked the men and women that we depend on to run this city. So we're making good on the promise that we made going into 2023. So 2024, it does start with that 2.5 increase in pay that we promised our people. That's a big win. So the investments in our people will continue because, again, we're standing on the results of their work. So whether that is over the 41 million in city subsidies relative to construction projects, and we've seen in regards to our revenue grow in this area. We've seen tax dollars grow, but again, we've also seen a decline in this year that we don't believe will increase as we complete this last quarter of 2023, moving into 24. But the construction projects that we've gotten off the ground are, again, a testament to the hard work of the employees of this city, but also the people who show up, who continue to want to invest in us. leveraging those dollars. We've seen, of course, millions invested in public safety. As our people have told us, going to budget meetings across the city of New Orleans, and I have to say, it was really refreshing to get back in front of the people. And I want to thank all of the district council members who participated in your district meetings. You heard directly from the residents just as we did. And we proposed and we baked this budget with their priorities intact and real alignment, which goes back to how we've been investing one time, but also our general fund dollars. The ARPA money in terms of public safety, again, our public has said to us that they look at public safety as a matter of public health. So our investments that we've made in over 50 million, even still with our New Orleans Health Department, violence prevention, mental health services, domestic violence services, maternal health, focusing there, the mobile crisis intervention unit, all of these things we're seeing today are paying dividends. There's a return on our investment that's meeting our people where they are, and we're seeing it. Even the over $32 million that we have pushed forward in funding relative to gap financing, that we know that our people are suffering from relative to interest rates, insurance rates, premiums increasing, construction, labor, again, supply costs and the like. But we've listened. As it relates to us standing up, homeless services, quality of life came out of these meetings and came from the public as a top priority. 27% of our people said we have to move forward with investing in quality of life. And we are doing that. And more to come. We saw very heavily, again, focusing on our youth and programming. 10 million that we stood up, even thinking forward 3 years in the making, that our young people will need to be connected to the services that they say that they need the most. We're doing that. So how we see ourselves today is how we're going to ensure that we realize the true vision of the city of New Orleans that this budget is bringing forth to you. We're going to continue again to invest in public safety in our people. We're going to continue to invest in quality of life. We're going to continue to invest in infrastructure and economic development opportunities because the people have asked for it and we will continue to deliver. But one greatest testament of all the work that's been done, and even as it relates to the foundation that has been set and laid for moving this city forward, it has come, I would say, in the past several weeks, cemented in major awards that this city has received. So whether that's here recently, the 55 million investment in our grid and in stabilizing our distribution lines, 55 million to Entergy New Orleans. This is something that we work very hard on and something that is a win for our city for generations to come, which is a testament to the hard work and where we're focusing. Whether that is the $3 million of solid waste infrastructure for recycling, again, we're getting the work done and we're able to leverage it with federal money. The $8 million from urban and community forestry, from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, again, focusing on our urban canopy and the environment that we're in terms of climate adaptation. We have embraced this wholeheartedly. Or whether that's the $2 million from the U.S. Department of Justice as it relates to community violence intervention programs, again, based on the work that we've done. The 2 awards totaling 1.3 million as it relates to designing and rehabilitation for Bayou Bienvenue wetlands. Again, playing to our strengths, looking at how we're investing and leveraging those resources effectively. Or that's even the 15 million that we've seen coming our way from HUD, again, investing in our unsheltered population of our people. So I am proud. But more importantly, I am grateful. I'm grateful for the men and women who continue to show up and deliver on behalf of the vision that we have collectively set forth. And it is my hope that we collectively as a city demonstrate not only to those who see the best in us, but for us to see the best in us and see it today and into the future. The best truly is yet to come because we have labored hard and we have gotten things done. But where we are right now in our position, we came in with 5% relative to a fund balance in terms of crisis management. This budget presented is 20%. That is in line with our financial leadership nationally that says this is where we need to be. But guess what? This is where we are. So again, we're here because of the work and we're wanting to keep the work moving forward. We have the resources in place, but absolutely it means accountability. It means transparency. It means good government. And we embrace all of those values and all of those principles 100%. So you will get a full presentation of the budget that we're presenting and that we're proposing to you on this morning. But with that, understand that you have our full commitment to continue to show up and strive to be better as we do every single day. We see the value and we see the benefit. And to you, our people, I continue to see you and I thank you. Our greatest asset, again, are the people that we depend on to do the work. So, hey, let's continue to get to work together. What I will also just kind of end with, as we know, and I talked briefly about our receipts relative to revenue in terms of tax increases or no tax increases relative to this budget. But as we look at 2023 in our last quarter month, we also look at the sales tax revenue that we have seen a decrease in. But the revenue increases that we have been able to demonstrate, again, come from the hard work, force multipliers, construction that is happening in this city. But I will say to you that I'm very much focused on, and I need your help collectively, relative to the short-term rental. We see there's an over $20 million decrease in revenue, but that's something that we will have to look at moving forward. Also, as it relates to franchise agreements, and I know you are the regulators of utilities. So it is my hope that we can, again, focus these companies that have these agreements with us to do what they're supposed to do. Pay the city for using our rights of way and also holding them accountable so that they're not causing any delays in all of the infrastructure work that we have on the ground. And also, you know, in 2025, the city of New Orleans will be hosting Super Bowl. So as we're moving through 24 and being very aggressive in our approaches of implementation, not just because we're hosting Super Bowl, but it does matter. We're wanting to make sure that in 2025, that we're set up to ensure that we can live off of the work, the investments, and the results for generations to come in our city. So thank you again for giving me this opportunity. Thank you again for preparing yourselves for what I believe will be a very robust and thorough budget process. And in the end, I hope that we can come out renewed, transformed with a real reset of how we work together and how we demonstrate respect and dignity in the work that we all do. So God bless you. God bless the city of New Orleans and absolutely the state of Louisiana and the United States of America. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All right, so at the table to make the presentation will be Mr. Montaigne, Mr. White, and Ms. Story. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council Chair Giruso, Council President, Council Vice President, members of the entire City Council for hosting and having this opportunity for the administration to present our fiscal year 2024 budget for your review. I anticipate a very engaging and thorough and thoughtful process, as the mayor said. I believe we've reached out directly to each office to have follow-up one-on-one meetings after this presentation and throughout the processes that our department directors will come and present directly and be available for any questions. We understand very clearly that this is our proposed budget, and I really want to highlight that this is a very unique period in our budgeting process. As we've reflected coming out of the pandemic, we had to really level set and reset many of our foundational needs and core operational dynamics within our agencies to understand what the baseline was, set the foundation, and then understand what is the follow-up necessary for each individual department to ensure they had the needs and the resources available to accomplish their mission. This is year 2 of that budget to actuals process. So I say that only to tease that there will be an understandable amount of changes to this particular budget to ensure that we have the highest and best use of our resources while we continue to stabilize and recreate our foundation for the longevity of the city. There's some very key components that we are trying to address, but frankly, this particular budget, I really consider as being obviously structurally sound, but also a restabilization of the budget, not just for the short term, but certainly for the long term, as we've seen is absolutely necessary. So with the budget chair and the committees or the full council's permission, I'll start the presentation. I will probably not spend its 50 plus slides. I'd just like to be a little bit fastidious when it comes to the details, but I will not probably go through every single slide and obviously open it up for questions, give you the highlights. There's nothing too extraordinarily new in this budget that you all aren't aware of or haven't been aware of, as I said, since this really started last budget process. Here's the presentation as it relates to the table of contents. There's the framework that we always typically share within these. You've seen these every year for many hearings. And this really kind of goes into what we were talking about on the uniqueness and the influx of where we had a significant amount of one-time funds as we tried to manage those through the reoccurring needs that we had. We've tried to be observant of the difference and differentiation between the one-time funds and the reoccurring funds, and we hope we've reflected that within our budget. The last thing we want to do is create a scenario after 2 years and there is no one-time funding for reoccurring costs, and we've tried to be very strategic in that, as you'll see throughout the budget. The major budget highlights, as we've talked about and committed to in year 1, was a 2.5% raise. First year, we provided city employees 5% raises, and then we committed to a 2.5% raise across the board for the next 3 years, or 2 years, I should say now, which will be a little bit over a 10%. Why that is important and why that matters is that, as we know, the labor pool is becoming more and more challenging to attract employees. Competitive pay is a vital necessity, and ensuring that our employees are taken care of was an utmost priority, I know, both for the council and the administration, and that is reflected. Those go with big numbers. Those are expensive, obviously, but we wanted to make sure that we stayed committed to providing that raise for our employees. You'll also see the commitment that we made to our police department to provide a 5% raise throughout the next 3 years, just because of the even more competitive nature and challenges we're facing within the NOPD. Another priority, both for the council and the administration, is merit pay. And this is relative to our employees. And I think this is an important piece and opportunity for a better course of management and opportunity for those employees that work the hardest. This came at a significant cost as well, almost $9 million. I know the council passed this, we supported this, but this gives our employees the opportunity to have a one-time bonus opportunity based on their evaluations, up to $2,000 per employee. And that is for the whole year, and that is about $9 million. And we saw great success with Mardi Gras, reopening Mardi Gras. I think that was a successful program, although it was very shortened. We're planning in a much more strategic way. We feel like that is necessary to re-articulate into the budget process to have that special rate of pay, both for our internal officers and those officers that we have coming from around the state. The next several slides really just re-articulate some of the one-time fundings that have came before the council, have been voted by the council, and have now been and are in the process of being executed by the administration. But it's important to highlight because those carry over within our budget process. So as you see, our priorities still remain to be on blight remediation, service cuts, street lights, pothole, catch basin cleaning, graffiti abatement program, obviously our homeless issues. And then you can see the full plethora of both our reinvestment in our technology, our systems management, our title research, our staff augmentation to make sure that we're getting the job done, and other important necessities, probably not as glamorous as some of the more exciting political wins, but vital for the backbone organization and ensuring that our residents have the goods and needs met by our employees, both on the internal and external parts. One of the things that I've highlighted and I really wanted to articulate and re-articulate, and I'll keep banging the drum on it, is our dashboards. As you've seen, we had an ARPA dashboard, it's gone live, but we also have created a fund balance dashboard. So this allows the council, the public, the media, whomever would like to go and check how we are spending our money. Like I said, there was hundreds of millions of dollars entrusted to us as an organization. We want to make sure that people know how it's being spent, where it's being spent, where we are in the process. So 2 dashboards, one specifically for ARPA and one for fund balance that are updated real time was a priority. And we were making sure that we're making true of that priority. So anytime you all would like, feel free to check them out and ask us any questions accordingly. It's not without an important part of the presentation to tell the council where we had increased cost and where we had to augment our additional revenue to pay for those increased costs. The SAFER grant was an opportunity we received from the federal government to supply additional firefighters. That was a 4-year grant that they paid for the hiring and the payment of those firefighter salaries. That grant has now rolled off. Obviously, we're not going to not have the need for those firefighters, so we have to pick up the tab for that grant. That's in the realm of around $7 to $7.5 million. Healthcare contribution has also gone up, as you've seen across the nation, as well as pension employer contributions. The new sanitation contracts obviously also will take an increase over the course of the next fiscal years, and we wanted to highlight that. An increase in our technology costs and some of our staff augmentation, and of course, the Healthy Homes program we want to make sure is robust. Just for the purposes of the record and understanding, I thought it important to highlight the quadrennial assessment year. And I want to repunctuate that this is a budget that has chosen collectively, I believe, with the council to not burden our citizens with a additional assessment of their property taxes. So there is no tax increase relative to our budget built in. I will highlight that should the city have rolled forward or had the decision to move forward, it would have been upwards of close to $35 million of additional revenue that we have foregone for the sake of the residents being able to manage their budgets, as we know that there is significant costs, everything from home insurance to the grocery store, and we wanted to be thoughtful, respective, and
Mr. Montano, I'm actually just going to interrupt you for
Sure.
one moment here because I do think this is important. Number one, I think it bears stressing again that this was a collective decision. I heard the mayor use the word collective a number of times. So I think this is a moment of inflection to say the city and the council both did this with eyes wide open. And number two, if my math is right, that means we saved the residents of New Orleans $140 million over a 4-year period of time. That is a significant amount of money that I think, helps people who are too cost burdened, and as you articulated, are paying higher taxes, higher services, homeowners insurance is going up. but this is the way that the city collectively can provide relief to everybody.
Thank you for re-highlighting that. That is an important aspect and really one that, you know, the needs are obviously very important for the city, but we understand the residents and what they're going through as well. So wanted to reframe the process that we had to go through the reassessment and understand and highlight where we have the various millages, and then also show the other taxing authorities and where they are with the millages, since it is a quadrennial year assessment. As you know the process well, the LLA determines the official millages, but we still had to create the methodology and essentially do the math to determine the value of the mill. That is what the next few slides will go into briefly. This is the calculation for the 2023 rolls, and I'll just fast forward to the value, which is important for 2024. Oh, I just passed it. So you'll see the value of the millage absent of the homestead exemption was $5.8 million. That is a significant increase. Property values have obviously increased, and that is a testament and also a good positive for the city of New Orleans. However, as a collective, we have not chosen to prepare a budget nor adopt a budget that has any form of tax increase in it. You will see additional revenue in all transparency from additional millages, but that's purely new construction, not an advance or an increase of taxes. Once again, it is part of the evaluation period and the summary. We set our revenue on Monday through the revenue estimating conference. This breaks down the total general fund revenue at 762. Obviously, that's not representative of the entire budget, which is closer to 1.5 billion, nor does it include our capital program, which is about the same. So overall, the collective organization has well over a $3 billion budget if you combine all our funds. This is purely, as you all understand and know, a reflection of our general fund budget. So we did have revenue increases. Obviously, where the revenue went was highlighted toward our personnel and some of the other needs associated with that, and the cost increases as well. This is a table axis of our funding sources and our expenditures, mostly just for edification and breakdown for whomever would like to dive deeper into it. Obviously, we have details on any and all of these should there be questions, as I'm sure there will be later through this process. Here's where you see a little bit of the breakdown of each agency and where and how some of their funding goes, and the evaluation associated with each one of the major offices within the city of New Orleans. I won't line by line these, as I know that each particular agency for the most part will come and sit before the body and answer directly any of these questions. And I really want to re-highlight, we understand that we will have a iterative process through this, and we are looking forward to that interaction with the council. This is the external agencies. I think that I know the budget chair and I have worked very closely together to ensure that we have significant transparency with our external agencies. I think it's an important part of the process, and we're certainly asking and will be more formalizing how we want to move forward with some of the external agencies. We want to make sure that the value and the funding and the resources that are going directly toward where we anticipate and hope they're going. So more is to come relative to the formalization of our external agencies, but this does provide you a breakdown of how and where their funding is going and where we plan to go after the remaining of this year. I would not be remiss if I didn't mention ARPA and the ARPA dashboard, and then essentially close out on committees and information that has already been presented to the council, but as I said, is all part of the collective soup that is created for this particular budget. And this just gives you the ARPA spending updates. I'm happy to unpack, should you like any of the specific questions for any line item that you all should have, but in the essence of a repeating mistake, I will just go through these presentation slides. This is our fund balance update that is in complete merits to our ARPA update. We had meetings with our directors yesterday to ensure that we have the execution plans in place and also the reevaluation plan should we need to, if the money is not spent in a timely period, to reevaluate where those funds and resources must go. I would be remiss to say that we, as always, plan to work directly with council on amendments to address what has not already occurred. One in particular that I know is important both to the administration and to the council and to the voters is the passage of the code enforcement department. We have not reflected that in this exact proposed budget, and I want to be very clear as to why. We want to make sure that we have all the proper administrative and financial setups. It's a little bit of a complicated process. You know, it's been years where code enforcement has kind of been a catch-all for many different agencies and many different codes and funds. And we just wanted to have sufficient setup time to make sure that we're not missing the mark and absent in leaving something in one department when it should be under the other department. And so I want to make the commitment that it is not intentional not to provide that specific department as the council and the administration supported and the voters overwhelmingly had. But we wanted to ensure that we have everything correct instead of fast. And so that's why you won't see it in the proposed, but we hope and anticipate it at the adopted time. We will have that opportunity to have ironed out those details and ensure, as the voters asked for January 1st, there is a new department. It is an important department both for each and every agency. And I wanted to highlight and reflect that overall. And in ultimate closing, it is a structurally sound budget. It prepares for the long term. As the mayor and the council's highlighted, there is a significant an important investment in our reserve fund that played out to be very important. Even as we were anticipating the saltwater intrusion, it was very clear that there was going to have to be tens of millions of dollars put forth should that have had to occur. We were prepared to do so because of the reason of having a significant investment in our reserve fund. We hope and anticipate that that reserve fund for the long term remains strong. We understand that there is a balance of having too much money when you have a city of great needs. I feel like we've found the sweet spot, both with the credit rating agencies and for the future of our organization, but also still providing through some of those one-time opportunities, a way to enhance those that are needing the funding immediately and now. So barring any other questions, I will turn it back over to the budget chair to address any questions, and I certainly will be remiss at this point not to thank the tens and hundreds of people that helped develop this budget. As you can see, it's a complex budget. Everything in New Orleans is extremely and profoundly complex, and the budget is no different. And there's a lot of time, energy, and effort. And I know employees were working at 2 o'clock in the morning last night to make sure everything kind of came together. Developing a budget is a craft. It is a skill set. It is a balancing act. You have fringe tables, you have money tables, you have a whole lot of goes into making the sausage relative to a budget. And there's so many unspoken names, both in my office, Norman's office, and throughout the city that care deeply to ensure the longevity of the city. So I want to thank them personally. And as I know, the council and the council staff also deals with them directly. So I will reluctant to name names because I always will leave someone important out, but everyone knows who they worked on this. And I think that it is a solid budget and a transitional plan that creates a greater tomorrow for the city of New Orleans. With that, Mr. President, Madam Vice President, members of the council, I'll turn it back over to Chairman Giarrusso. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montano. We have a couple of comments. I have one comment card though, colleagues. So I figured let's get through the one public comment and then we'll get to the comments that are on the board. Mr. Riley, are you still here? Mr. Riley, yeah.
As he's coming up, Chairman, one of the things I forgot to mention is that we know that the council is going to have their needs and their requests, and a lot of them that I'm anticipating are more capital in nature. Some have talked directly to me. So I wanted to make sure that although maybe it's not reflected in the operating budget, our goal and intention is to work directly with each council member to anticipate those capital needs that have been addressed. And like I said, we have a month to develop and determine those amendments. So the thought process and the plan is still to support you all in those needs. Most of them that I've heard directly have been capital needs, and we want to make sure that that is reflected within the capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Riley?
Thank you, members of the council. My name is Bruce Riley from Voters Organized to Educate. I just want to remind the council about the city's propensity to reallocate funds from the capital budget, as they did with the jail. They took millions of dollars from other projects. They moved it to the jail. They expressed to the community that this is because the federal judge forced them to do it. We filed in court saying you have to get a permit the proper way. You have to go through the funding the proper way. And the federal judge just kicked it down yesterday back to the local court. So we hope to be back in front of you for like a multi-million-dollar mental health debate, because they seem to believe that $100 million is appropriate to go to a jail expansion. But I don't know if their capital outlay is going to come anywhere close to that for mental health in the community. So I want you to at least try to hold them accountable to not reallocate funds. And if there's anything you can do to put the actual strings attached and pull back the money, you should do that, because clearly they haven't upheld their promises when they've done budget outlays. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. All right, Mr. Green and then Councilmember Moreno.
Thank you, Councilmember Jeruso, and thank you, members of the council, for this special meeting. I do want to start off by just saying to those who are in the audience that I appreciate your work. I see the positive that is going on in our city in the midst of some of the challenges that we have. Just this morning, for example, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I saw Mr. Nathaniel Fields, who has been at regular cleanups because of his sincerity, his desire to want to see the issue of homelessness addressed, because it impacts the public and it impacts those who are in those encampments and those who are unhoused. He spoke about the need to get housing. He spoke about the need to keep the area cleaner, because it's a tragedy that there are so many people who are affected by disease. He showed pictures of the members of the public who are not doing the right thing relative to food dumping, but it was an example of someone who was working because he was sincere about wanting to make a positive change in our community. On Saturday, to everyone who was involved, I want to commend the city and I want to commend the citizens for showing up in large numbers to present at that neighborhood summit an opportunity for all of the members of our city, all of the residents of our city, and those who might be visiting, to see city departments in action, to see what we can do to enhance the quality of life in our city. I have general comments because this is the beginning of a process, and I will certainly review this document and also present potential amendments based on what I see as necessary. But I'm glad to see a cost of living increase in here for employees of the city and for members of our New Orleans Police Department who work so very hard. Just last night, I was at a meeting where sometimes it's hard for the community to say that, you know something, things are going pretty well, but they had something positive to say about the work of the New Orleans Police Department, as I do on a regular basis, because I hear and see what they do each day. But the most important thing that I want to say, and if you see me walk out, I will tell you this, it's only because I'm going to a meeting, which is another meeting that is associated with city revenues being made available to assist in mobile health clinics being available to our citizens of New Orleans to address some of the crises that we have in the city of New Orleans. I am upbeat about the city of New Orleans, the budgeting process itself, and our ability as a council to work with the administration to make some positive changes that need to be made in our city. I don't consider this an adversarial process at all. Some people have said they're gonna come and they're gonna blast this one and they're gonna blast that one. I'm ready for it. But at the end of the day, it's important for us to work together, to work as an administration and a council, recognizing that all of the work that we're doing is to enhance the quality of life for our citizens in general. So I thank those who have taken the opportunity and the time to go through and present this budget, which I will peruse page by page so that I can make suggestions so that we can be and continue to be good stewards of the public money. I'm looking forward to working with members of the council to address those changes that may need to be made, but to work with the administration. So at the end of the day, once this budget is approved, it's a reflection of us working together. And I want the media to know that when we approve a budget, it's going to be based on us working together. It's not going to be an adversarial process. There may be some adversarial processes as we go along, but the final product is going to be designed to help us to work with the instance and with the intent of keeping the citizens of New Orleans safer and to helping to grow our city. So I know I will close with this, and sometimes I can be verbose. Close. This is my second close, but this is the close. Thank you all, members of the administration. Thank you, members of the city council. Thank you, citizens of the city of New Orleans. Things are getting better. I see it every day, blight reduction, crime reduction. It's because we are working together. Let's continue to do exactly as we're doing and continue to move this city forward. This budget is important, but the most important thing is that we're all working together, Citizens Incorporated, to make sure that these dollars are used well to help to enhance the quality of life in our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Green. Vice President Moreno, President Morrell.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question, just generally speaking about the budget. I think we all believe that it's important to build a budget around the needs of the different departments so that they can best meet the needs of the people of this city. So tell me a little bit about the type of collaboration and communication that you had with each department head or different entities so that we are ensuring that what they believe, the directors, the department heads believe they need out of their departments to best serve the city is actually what is presented in this budget.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Vice President, members of the council. It's always a challenge to address all the needs department directors have as opposed to what our resources are available. So unequivocally, the teeter goes like this. There's $100 million of requests with maybe $20 million of new revenue. So it is a process of executive council evaluation, determine what are the highest and most important needs that we have. The commitment that I've made to directors that I made yesterday, last year, we did a budget to actuals, as you all know and reflect, where we just funded departments based on what they spent. But we were very clear with the indication that should you need something within your budget year, a hire, and I did this with the external agencies as well, some imminent needs, some specific contract, we can approve it mid-year and we could course correct mid-year. I gave that same commitment again, both to the external agencies and to our department directors, where your submission may not reflect your exact request, but there is not lost hope where that may not happen. And I want to say almost unequivocally, and I'm sure I'll get up and I'll get argued with on this, but I don't think that there wasn't a department that didn't get what they needed that was absolutely imminent for their agency. There was no no's. And that was simply done and managed through their existing resources based on whether or not they hired this person. We were able to hire this person, whether they collapsed the position one way or the other. So where I'm trying to directly answer your question is the assurance I can give is that even if their full request is not provided in some form or some fashion within this executive budget, that doesn't end their opportunity, because these are agile documents that should need the needs real time, as opposed to here's our set plan and here's the end plan and there's nothing that happens in between. So that is what I've told them. That is what I tell the council and the external agencies. And I feel like last year was a good model for that worked very well, frankly. And we didn't have to course correct too many things. We had to move some things around, but ultimately their missions were able to be accomplished. And I do the same thing this year.
Yeah, there's just some really big projects that we've talked about that I just want to make sure that they're, somewhere in the budget, particularly around the violence prevention initiatives. And, making sure that, that the hires for that and everything that's necessary for that they're going to be, that we're going to get it done. And so that's kind of the assurance I'm looking for. And I think, I get what you're saying with with what we did last year about, here's what you spent last year, therefore that's what's in your budget. And if you need to hire any additional people, that's great. But those are like a few hires here and there, which I totally understand. But I think for like some of these like really larger initiatives that we're working through, I think it would be important for us to just really understand like where they're budgeted and where we're setting aside this money, so we make sure that they really will be funded.
Madam Vice President, members of the council, absolutely, we'll make that commitment. I know we're talking abstractly right now, but when we
I can
have.
get more specific with
Yeah,
you.
no, I mean, and I'm happy to do that now or at a later time, like most of the council understands, this is the beginning of the process and we hope and anticipate.
I'll get more specific at a later time since we're more generally speaking about the budget, but
Sure.
but overall, that's just my point. I just want to make sure that, you know, we have been talking about and committing to really large scale projects dealing with violence prevention in particular. And so I just want to make sure that that funding is going to be set aside because it is a large amount of dollars that we're talking about
Sure.
to meet these needs.
And it's not, I'm absolutely not tone deaf to understand that the priority has to be addressed on significant amounts of both prevention programs and addressing both violent crime, domestic violence issues and
Right.
other funding civilianization aspects. So I feel like our budget has reflected that even in some of the increases, and sometimes we had to use different funds to be able to do that. And I talked a little bit with the budget chair about this last week on how we fund certain programs absent of general fund dollars, meaning whether or not we tap other resources to be able to provide that, even if it's ARPA, fund balance, other things to make sure that they're stood up and they live through the future and address the needs they have. So I hear you. The administration is completely supportive of addressing the violence issues that we're having within the city. And I believe that our financial obligations are reflective of that within the budget. And if we have to make augmentations to address that need, we're certainly willing to do so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. President, then Councilmember Thomas.
Council Vice President covered a lot of my issues. Only one issue in particular I wanted to get your input on. Can we go to slide 19? I sincerely appreciate that in doing this budget was based upon the city's position. I think the administration and council have been on the same page on not doing a roll forward. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I guess my concern is the council sent a letter, and could you go to slide 12? The council sent a letter. I know you're aware of this. I'm pretty sure Councilman Drusa copied it on it, to all of the various sub-agencies within our city roll forward, roll back universe, requesting that they adopt the same position as the administration and the council. We only received an affirmative response, Mr. Druso, if I'm correct, from downtown development and from the libraries. The question I think that is at the front of all of our minds is, obviously, at the end of the budget process in December, we will vote on whether or not to roll forward or roll back. As stated in the slide, the vast majority of these agencies are included within the council universe and the city universe. Have you communicated with any of these agencies, and have they given you any clear idea on what their intent is? Because I guess from my point of view, it was very gratifying to have the library step up, have downtown development step up, say affirmatively, we are on board with you and we're not going to do a roll forward. But what's concerning is that as we approach this period, the city has been very prudent and budgeted based upon a rollback, but we have not received any communication from groups like the Auditing Commission or Sewage and Water Board until recently on what their intent was. And I'm wondering from your perspective, have any of these groups reached out to you and tried to have a conversation on trying to reflect what their position will be?
Mr. President, council members, the only one that I can say affirmatively has reached out, and I'm not, maybe I reached out, I forget how it started, was the Orleans Parish School Board. As you see, that is a significant amount of millages. Should they roll forward, that's close to $50 million. And coupled with that over 4 years is, $200 million. We have anticipated the conversation, and I think that there's a meeting planned to understand where they're going or what their ideas are. Other than that, no other agency other than the Orleans Parish School Board has reached out to have a discussion or a conversation.
Well, I know we are both because we were both copied on the receipt of a letter from the Sewage and Water Board on the 18th of this month, where they proclaim their desire that we roll forward their millages. And to your point, when you calculate off of this page, when you look at the millages that the council is the taxing authority of, and to be honest, you really have to subtract downtown development, Garden District, and Toro Bologna because those are region specific. So not everyone in the city, pays those millages. But when you take those out, you look at the sewage and water boards, roughly 15 mills. In that universe, it's 1/5 of all the millage dollars that the average person pays. And I guess my concern is there's council representation on the sewage and water board. Their mayor sits on the sewage and water board. Both parties have made it expressly clear, the council in July, that we will not do a roll forward. And until we got this letter on the 18th, you and I and a couple of other people in government, I guess there is a significant disconnect that if the council has already expressed that we are not contemplating roll forwards. I know that the mayor has made some reference that she's not supportive necessarily of rolling forward in this current environment. For the life of me, I can't understand, with no communication other than a letter that we got on the 18th proclaiming their desire that we roll forward, why we haven't gotten assurances from Sewage and Water Board that they have budgeted for a rollback. Because my concern is obviously, because drainage is part of the city's obligation as well, through Public Works. If they're budgeting for a roll forward and they have not communicated that to anyone, that's problematic if they get a rollback. And I think that's something that together the council and mayor are going to have to go back to them and say, what is your budget for 2024? And does it contemplate reality or does it contemplate your wish? Because as I said, I really appreciate and I want to compliment the administration on budgeting based on a rollback because that's reality. Reality is that we have expressed to the public with tremendous burdens it faces, stuff like the increasing property valuations, issues like the cost of property insurance. The city does not want to price people out of their homes. And by rolling back, the city is getting its defined revenue it's had previously. We're just not picking up additional revenue at this time. It just seems like a huge disconnect and a missed opportunity. So I know the mayor sits as the president. I've had communication with Councilmember King, but I think it's important to express to Sewage and Water Board that we really need them to be budgeting based on a rollback, not a roll forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas.
First of all, thank you. I got a whole list of notes here, but I'm not going to belabor that. I'm going to ask a few questions about your position, but I want to start with the mayor's comment about how we see ourselves. That's one of the great challenges in this community, but also how a budget is applied determines how that person in the neighborhood, that person on the street, that kid in school, those people on the playground, how we apply that budget, how it impacts their lives also determines how we see ourselves. And for the employees who are in the audience, thank you guys very much for your work in District E, partnering with the neighborhood organizations there, and the impact we're having on rebranding and investing in the only place that the city can really grow and should grow. You mentioned something in your opening presentation, Montalvo. You said, Montano, rather. You said it's important this year, budget restabilization. You know, for folk who are listening, what do you mean if it was already stabilization, or if it wasn't stabilization, why is this year's budget important for restabilization?
Mr. President, Councilmember Thomas, thank you for the question. Really, the restabilization comment is important because of post-pandemic era. I think that it's important and vital to understand that we were on a certain trajectory pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic happened and it really disrupted both micro and macroeconomic issues. So locally, we had to address $100 million loss. And from the macroeconomic perspective, we had to deal with supply chain issue, the Great Resignation period, and an unanticipated, frankly, inflationary challenge that were existing. Last year, we had, and we were blessed to have an influx of significant one-time funding. One-time funding was absolutely vital, but it doesn't carry out the day past the end of that period of spend down. So the restabilization that I was reflecting dealt with post-pandemic revenues and managing through one-time expenses blended through reoccurring needs over the course of the next several years. And we've always anticipated and strategized through the next several years to ensure that when this time of service in these roles is gone, the next administration is set up for success. And I think that's an important piece and why you'll see the investments and the restabilization of that budget to actuals model that we went through, challenged and accompanied by the longevity of the reserve fund to address those future needs, and doing the best possible thing we can do is keep reoccurring to reoccurring matched.
Well, I mean, that's very good because it walks me right into my next question. One-time funding, ARPA funds versus recurring funds. And so the question I asked was, are there any areas where we've used one-time funding that will impact recurring funding or budget needs that could affect the restabilization or potential restabilization in the future? Because you've asked us to be very mindful at how we dole out and give out money because it could impact future budgets. It's like a lot of folk don't pay attention to the national budget, but you know, I'm an old man with young children. Our debt, national debt, could affect my young children in terms of how they purchase homes and how they go to school and where they live or access to education. So have we spent one-time funds in areas that are ultimately going to impact stabilization or restabilization moving forward?
Mr. President, Council Member Thomas, I'd never want to answer the question in absolutes. Where we have spent one-time funding on hypothetically reoccurring costs, you just use staff, for example. Have we hired people on one-time costs? The short answer is yes, but that is not without clear indication that after those one-time dollars are gone, and I'll use the ARPA team, for example, we have a project team associated with the implementation of this. Those positions are aligned completely with the timeline of the ARPA projects. So there are other similar situations that are designed to help spend down some of this money, project manage some of this money that will go away when that one-time money is gone. And that's also the same case with some of the backlog issues that we've had. We're always going to have a need to address rape kits, DNA testing, title research, things of that nature. But the one-time money that we're spending on that is for the backlog, not the future. So I will say that there is periods where you can point to that says, hey, that's a reoccurring cost and use one-time money. But I will caveat it with there is an end date of that reoccurring cost absent of the money.
So we haven't
Similar to a grant.
genderalized the budget.
Mr. President, Council Member.
You know, Bobby Jindal was famous for spending one-time funds in areas where they require recurring.
I've heard that term and I researched it and
It's a real term.
right. And I unequivocally know, I think that we wouldn't be worth our salt if we weren't setting the city up in the future for the next generation to succeed in. And I think that I would never present you all a budget if I thought that it was Jindalized, if that's the term that you're referring to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not an icing. That's a real budget term. You mentioned unexpected costs during COVID, especially for materials and goods. And there was always the boogeyman about projects that were once funded were now 30 and 70% and 100% more. Is that stabilized yet? So is now that some costs are going down, the access to goods and materials now are more plentiful, have we stabilized there?
Mr. President, Councilmember Thomas, I don't feel like we have stabilized on all the commodity markets for the resources that we need. There is definitely a significant improvement from the supply chain aspect. Significant. There was challenges where we couldn't do anything at some point. We were almost stalemated and competing with other jurisdictions just to get a simple commodity. Those have ironed themselves out in some perspective, but those are kind of a macroeconomic challenge that I think everybody is facing. It is leveled out, but is it to the point where I think that it is seamless and just simple to provide a good and service? No, I think that there is still a larger challenge that we're addressing with that. And that, of course, bleeds into our inflationary issues that we have because of those when an economy gets pressed, right? And I don't want to get overly technical, the outcome certainly will take a decade plus to actually course correct. So I don't know if the economy overall will ever really truly restabilize prior to COVID until the next 7 years. And the Fed reports these out, I think just maybe it was 3 weeks ago, kind of highlighting the same topic. Where it's going to take a little bit of time. The consumer has power right now. The consumer buyer has power, but it is not to the point where it was, and it won't be for still several years. If that addresses your question.
Well, yeah, I mean, I asked that question because in many cases, the power was taken, especially from municipal governments and for capital projects in terms of controlling costs, where professional services and contractors were estimating that contracts would be 170, 80, 90% more. So how do we begin to protect ourselves as we don't understand that the market has stabilized, especially in the area of providing those goods and providing those services? We're at their mercy if we don't understand the market and if there's collusion in the market.
Mr. President, Council Member Thomas, we can only do our best to forecast and anticipate based on existing projects and existing closeout times, what the increase of some of those projects will be. And there will, and I said it earlier, there's going to have to be a reevaluation of some of these one-time, both on the capital and on the ARPA fund balance projects. To your exact question, if it's cost prohibitive based on a year ago forecast, based on the cost, 2 years in the future, and I know those are, pre and futuristic terms, then it will have to be reevaluated and determined. And, the commitment is to come back to the council to reallocate those funds, but it's not something we're not anticipating. In fact, we're planning on reallocation at some period, to your point, based on what both the cost is and what the amount of timeline for delivery, those particular projects are, reflecting.
I got a couple of things. I'm actually using your presentation and the mayor's comments in terms of my questions. It was mentioned the fourth quarter impact and how sales receipts in many areas have gone down. In talking to tourism leaders, Walt Leger, Kevin Ferguson, and other events, it seems that we've kind of tailed off in terms of sales taxes. What we thought we would expect in more stabilization and conventions and hotels and day stays. What impact did the fourth quarter have, and what do we expect moving into the next budget?
Mr. President, Council Member Thomas, the fourth quarter, this quarter we're in right now.
Yeah, you guys, the mayor mentioned it too.
I want to be, intellectually honest. I have not looked at all those
That's the only
sectors.
thing you'd ever be.
Right. I haven't looked at all the sectors and the revenue forecasts in the fourth quarter, so I can't validate that it has been a strong decline, and I would never try to estimate as to why that decline. I mean, typically, this is a slower season for a lot of the sales tax entities. It certainly starts picking up right as Mardi Gras starts all the way out through Jazz Fest. But to be completely intellectually honest, as I said, I can't speak upon the revenue losses for the fourth quarter of this year. We built and raised and set the revenue estimating conference in an aggregate. So I'm just reluctant to speak directly on the fourth quarter.
So when will you have an idea?
I'll review the fourth quarter projections as soon as we're done with this meeting.
Public safety. Former Interim Chief Woodfork and Chief Kirkpatrick have talked about recruitment and retention stabilization. Is the budget set up to deal with that, especially if the uptick continues as it relates to public safety?
Mr. President, Councilmember Thomas, yes.
I'm just a lowly council member.
I would never
Hey,
place you in that box,
Hey
certainly.
man, let's have fun.
Yes, is the short answer.
Okay,
Every officer they can bring in, we will hire, we will pay. Every civilian they can hire to address and augment, we will hire, we will pay. If there's something faster and better we can do, there is an unequivocal investment in our public safety program that has to be rebuilt. We're encouraged and thoughtful for the latest class to have planned the graduation. We hope to have 4 of those every single year and get their forces up as much as they can. We will figure out any which way possible to ensure and validate that our public safety agencies will have what they need to accomplish the mission of addressing the crime that we're dealing with.
$20 million. I mean, what's the total budget, including the capital budget?
I'll generally speak, it's probably close to $3 billion.
Okay,
Three billion.
$20 million, a lot of money in our budget?
Mr. President, Councilmember Thomas, yes. I would say that $100,000 is a lot of money in our budget. I have a very relative perspective of dollar amounts. So I know maybe from a $3 billion perspective, 20 million may seem small, but when I know what it takes to generate that $20 million on a reoccurring basis and where it goes from there. So I would say that's significant, but I would also say that with $100,000. I don't want to be flippant with dollar amounts, frankly, when we're dealing sometimes with challenges of squeezing our budget to balance with, a couple $100,000. So yes.
So anytime we can save $1, 100,000 or 20 million, it's worth taking a look at it, right?
Mr. President.
Or its impact.
Mr. President, Councilmember Thomas, I think that there's an opportunity to look at any particular savings. It should be very thoughtful and considered. You don't ever want to, I was always taught sometimes you pay cheap twice. So you don't want, and there's been a history of mistakes of buying something that looked cheap on the balance sheet, but then it ended up costing us 3 times more because we didn't invest properly the first time around. So I always want to maybe couch that with just because it's a lower price doesn't always mean it's the best product for our residents, but it's worth evaluating if there's opportunities for savings.
So I want to ask you a question. Yesterday, we had a hearing on Public Works about the presentation was made that potentially we could save anywhere between 19.5 and $20 million if we exercise the option of extending a particular sanitation contract. And sanitation was mentioned in terms of the budget here because of escalated costs. So if that possibility, are you guys committed to sitting down, taking a look at those numbers and those competing interests, to determine if there's actual savings before we move forward with the higher costs? And since $20 million and $100,000 means a lot in this budget.
Ms. President, Morel, Councilmember Thomas, I know exactly what you're reflecting, and I've seen the presentation and the letter, and we have sat down internally and discussed this thoroughly. There's a couple of different layers associated with this. One is the process in general. We don't, and we are concerned about changing the process midstream to evaluate a existing vendor's opportunity for a future. This went through a competitive process, and I'm not sure what that would mean for the future competitive processes if an existing vendor can come back and say, oh, I can do this cheaper. The second issue that I have is there has to be the same level, I feel, of service from one part of the city to another part of the city. What the proposal does provide or does not establish, it would create a differentiation of service levels at 2 different parts of the city. And that is something that has to be thought of and reflected as well. I guess where I'm saying I'm never unwilling to sit down and talk with anybody about anything if it is something that is beneficial to the city, and I'll always make that commitment. In this particular issue, I will not say I'm nascent to the conversation, nor am I not uneducated to the effects of one way or the other. I think that we saw one of the worst challenges in city's history with our garbage vendors over the course of IDA, and there's a lot to be said and learned from that entire process. My thoughts are we went through a collective process of an RFP. Everybody had the opportunity to provide their particular bids, their particular service levels. And then there was a competitive process, a selection process, a presentation process. And then we're here about, here is the opportunity to an extent a particular contract and it can save all this money. My fear is one, as I said, the process, the differing levels of service for the community. And then lastly, reflection of where we were post Ida. I'll never forget those days. So I'm not trying to overpresent the position of the administration because simply I'm willing to have those conversations and I know we've had them, but I do want to be transparent in the way my thought process is going in this conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm not trying to underpresent the importance of $20 million. I don't really care about the vendor. The issue is if someone puts on the table, especially we're talking about non-recurring funds versus recurring funds, budget restabilization. And when you talk about restabilization, it doesn't sound harsh, but you're pretty much putting us on notice coming out of COVID, coming out of ARPA funds. How do we restabilize and prioritize our budget? I've heard those words before, listening to budgets and listening to people like Jim Singleton and Kurt Steiner. And that's a real issue. So in an era of restabilization, which means you have to take another line item, look at your budget so that it's stable, using your words, moving forward for the next administration or for me, the next generation. When someone puts potential savings of $20 million on the table, I think it's worth more than just an internal look. It's worth a line item look. And what I'm asking you to do is if you're willing to commit based on your words in terms of how this budget needs to be managed and manicured, if there's an opportunity to put the microscope on that to make sure that if it's not attainable, at least we know why.
Mr. President, Councilmember Thomas, I'll make that commitment. I'll make the commitment to evaluate the pros and cons of that again and come back to you and give you the why. I feel like I've made some level of overture as to the why, but I don't want to close off and close my mind on the end game for that. So I will reestablish that commitment. Yes.
Well, a 20 million savings could wind up being 10. It could be 6, but it would be savings. So that's all I'm asking. In terms of the who, that's not an issue to me. But what was presented to us, and we're in the middle of the budget. So anytime budget the things that can impact the budget come up, I just think it's worth us taking a look. And look, in closing, thank you guys. When you look at the fund balance and historically what's been set aside in the fund balance to what you guys have tried to make sure we have in terms of the 20% and more, I don't think anybody can question how frugal and responsible you guys have been. As I've analyzed this budget and looking at other budgets and talking to some of the other budget gurus I know who are smarter than me that I sit with as we go through this process, you guys have been pretty much financially and fiscally responsible. So you need to get credit for that. But the way you determine a budget is how it impacts that house, that street, that neighborhood, that park, that program, and how it impacts it in terms of crime, quality of life, those social, the data that talks about New Orleans in terms of the social ills. So we may have a very sound budget, but when you read the Alice report and when you read the data center in terms of how it affects our community, or TCA's report on abject poverty, we need to take a look at how the budget impacts those people in those communities. And we can be good at managing the budget, but I think we had to combine that with how we manage life in this city. But thank you guys for being good stewards of the budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so just a few things in closing. I want to thank the administration for being here, for making the presentation. I see a lot of department heads in the audience. Will be good buddies for the next couple of weeks. It's good to see all of you. We start budget hearings on October 31st for the public. on Halloween. And on that day, we'll have the proposed millage rates, which the CAO went through in detail, Board of City Trusts, Department of Finance, Supplier Diversity, CAO Office, Budget, Office of Information and Technology, Office of Service and Innovation, Office of Employee and Labor Relations, the School Board, and Agenda for Children, their millage civil service. And I just kind of want to stress in closing a point Mr. Montano made, which is there are frequently a lot of changes to the budget process. My hope is A, by the time next year that the budget process starts in October, while there will still be changes, there will be fewer because we've had a longer period of time to talk about it. B, we know there's going to be changes, and I appreciate the commitment about rolling code enforcement up into the amendment and make sure that's part of the omnibus that happens. And then last, just ensuring that we're all working together because there's priorities that everybody shares and there's going to be tweaks along the way. So I appreciate everyone being here. I will move to.
No.
No? Oh, you got first reads?
I gotta read, no, I have to read all of
You
it
got to read all?
and then defer them.
All right. Well, we can do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Keeping me straight.
We have motion M 23-498 by Councilmember Jeruso by request, recommending projects to be funded for the remaining 4 years of the 5-year capital program 2025 through 2028. This matter has been deferred to December 1st. Motion M 23-499 by Councilmember Jeruso by request, approving the operating budget of the New Orleans Aviation Board for the year 2024. This has been deferred to December 1st. On top of page 3, all matters. Motion M 23-500 by Councilmember Jeruso by request, approving the operating budget of the Delgado Albania Plantation Commission for the year 2024 has been deferred to December 1st. Motion M 23-501 by Councilmember Jeruso by request, approving the operating budget of the French Market Corporation for the year 2024, and it has been deferred to December 1st. Motion M 23-502 by Councilmember Jeruso by request, approving the operating budget of the New Orleans Municipal Yacht Harbor Management Corporation for the year 2024 has been deferred to December 1st. Motion M 23-503 by Councilmember Jeruso by request, approving the operating budget of the New Orleans Parish Communication District for the year 2024. It has been deferred to December 1st. On top of page 4, all matters. Motion M 23-504 by Councilmember Jeruso by request, approving the operating budget of the New Orleans Building Corporation for the year 2024 has been deferred to December 1st. And motion M 23-505 by Councilmember Jeruso by request, authorizing the clerk of council staff to make any necessary technical, typographical, mathematical, and/or structural adjustment to any ordinances, motions, and amendments related to the adoption of the 2024 budget. This motion allows for the reassurance of accuracy and the elimination of errors, has been deferred to December 1st. Now you can adjourn.
You don't have any first reads?
No.
Okay. All right. With that, I will move to adjourn. Seconded by Councilmember Thomas. 5 yeas. We have 5 yeas. We stand adjourned. Thank you.
You're welcome.